it's safe to say that the administration wants to end the war on crypto. We've promised to do that.
Elon Musk and his Doge cronies are not trying to make the government more efficient. What they are doing is slashing important services.
In Elon's defense, there is no playbook for what he's doing. This has never been done before. So as he acknowledged, there are going to be some mishaps and mistakes along the way.
Hello, I'm Nancy Cordes in Washington. Tonight on America Decides, the Friday Roundup. President Trump gathers reporters in the Oval Office and gives wide-ranging remarks on Doge's efforts to cut federal workers, on eliminating the Department of Education, and on working with Ukraine as the two countries give diplomacy another try.
We had too many people in government. You can't just do that. We had too many. We want the education to be given by the states. It'll be much better. It'll move us to the top of the list from the bottom of the list. We're doing very well with Russia, but right now they're bombing the hell out of Ukraine. And I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine, and they don't have the cards.
Tariff turmoil just a day after the president pulled back tariffs on Canada and Mexico. A new trade tax warning, how he could soon roll out a tax on dairy and lumber that's coming over the northern border. All that, plus a new consideration to hit Russia with large-scale sanctions over its war on Ukraine. But let's start tonight with our political director, Finn Gomez, and congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns to talk about all of that. Happy Friday. Good to see you guys in person.
We made it.
So yeah, it's been a busy week, lots of twists and turns, particularly when it comes to tariffs, where the president's policies seem to change by the day. Today was no exception. Take a look at what he said about tariffs on Canada.
Canada has been ripping us off for years on tariffs for lumber and for dairy products. 250%. Nobody ever talks about that. 250% tariff, which is taking advantage of our farmers. So that's not going to happen anymore.
He went on to say that he's going to impose a 250% dairy tariff on Canada in the coming days. Who knows if that is actually going to come to pass. What's the strategy here, Finn? Is there a strategy?
You know, Nancy, I think whipsaw is my new favorite word of the week, because that's exactly how it feels like. This week has been that.
Last week was chainsaw. This week is whipsaw.
Exactly. Yes, Nancy. But I asked the White House about this earlier today, and essentially, they believe that this is the best efforts for him to really get what he thinks is best for the U.S. economy. He thinks ultimately that he believes in this, and it's ultimately what a strategy that he thinks will be best for the American economy. I did also speak to a former senior administration official about this specifically, someone who's been in the room with him, and he told me specifically that he truly believes in this. There's no ulterior strategy here.
So then why does he keep rolling it back as soon as he does it?
It's in part because he says that it's something that he said, and I quote, he said often that he believes that everybody wants to be everybody wants our markets. Everybody wants to be and have access to our markets. Mm-hmm. And before, in Trump 1.0, he had people who stood up and had different opinions on trade policy. And here, this time around, you really have people who believe in this protectionist perspective. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, they do believe that he thinks there's a method to this madness. There is a strategy behind here that would ultimately benefit the United States. But right now, this whipsaw is really the key word of what we've been seeing all week.
He thinks it's leverage to help him extract things from other countries. But Republicans, not so sure. I mean, they toe the party line on a lot of issues, but on this issue, they have been pretty vocal, some of them, about the fact that they don't think that this is a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, the president likes to say that tariff is his favorite word in the dictionary. Republicans on Capitol Hill do not share that sentiment. And they have been, you're right, Nancy, very vocal about this, because a lot of them come from big agriculture states, big manufacturing states, even in North Carolina, lumber, furniture, that kind of thing. So they have been more vocal here. Rand Paul gave an interesting quote this week saying, everybody in my state is coming up to me and saying, we don't like tariffs, we don't want them. But what's interesting here, and even John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, says, look, I don't share these views. We'll see. But what's interesting is that they are willing to give him kind of latitude here because he keeps changing his mind. And when you talk to Republicans about it, they say, look, this is what I think. I'm trying to tell the president this or hint to him, but we also know that he can pull them back when he wants to. So they're giving him a lot of latitude here, even as they're raising their hands about it.
We'll see how long the patience lasts.
Yeah. And they have been hearing an earful. The White House has from constituents, from Trump supporters, not just those lawmakers who are skittish and nervous about the impact that this tariff talks are happening. And remember, this was a party that just I'm old enough to remember a few years ago. This was a party free trade was a major component of the Republican Party. Now it's something completely different.
Finn, you've got some new reporting on the last administration, and specifically Vice President Kamala Harris, who we've known for a while. She was mulling a bid for California governor, but it's seemed to bubble back up into the news today. What's going on? That's
right, Nancy. And our colleague, Weijia Jiang, and I have been reporting on this today, that people close to former Vice President Harris tell us that she is strongly considering a run to be for governor of California. We do know that Governor Newsom is now the current governor, but he's term limited out. She is considering this decision and will make her decision by the summertime. Of course, all eyes are on her if she does do this. There has been some recent polling that shows she is the front runner there. And of course, though, however, politically, logistically, if you will, if she does run for governor, it does make a 2028 run really unlikely, I would say.
That is fascinating and interesting that she is now very seriously considering this. Finn Gomez, Caitlin Huey-Burns, thanks so much. Have a great weekend, you guys.
Thanks, Nancy.
The chief financial officer at FEMA was fired after Elon Musk alleged that she illegally sent funds to New York City to book luxury hotels for migrants. But in an interview with CBS Evening News co-anchor Maurice Dubois, Mary Coman says she was directed by a member of DOJ to make the payments.
I was directed by the Trump administration and the DOJ team to make that payment.
What if you said, okay, I'm not going to make that payment? How would that have looked? How would that have worked out?
The discussions and the dialogue that I had with the leadership at DHS as well as the DOJ team, they were not looking for our feedback and input. They were directing our action and letting us know what we can and cannot do.
So you're saying this is false. Do you think the administration knows this is false?
That's really a question for the administration.
Do you think they had some other reason for firing you?
I think I was fired for political motivations. What those are really questions both for Secretary Noem and President Trump and Elon Musk. I think it's unfortunate that myself and 3 other individuals were terminated by simply doing what we were told to do.
There was a tweet from the world's richest man, Elon Musk, saying what you did was a criminal action. How'd you take that?
Again, it's hurtful, but I know it's not true. I've done nothing but serve with integrity and honor. And it's unfortunate that words like that can be thrown around without recourse. My name has been slandered. I've been personally attacked. My family has been harassed. And my story is not unique. It is the story of many public servants across the nation today. And at some point, it has to stop.
And Maurice Dubois joins us now. Maurice, what a powerful interview. She said her family has been harassed. Is she receiving threats that lead her to feel that she's in danger?
She certainly is and does feel in danger, Nancy. You saw that passion, that emotion there. Here's somebody who joined DHS in the years after 9/11. She's very passionate about serving her country, and ultimately she becomes the FO of FEMA, and she thought she was doing the right thing, giving out money to people from disasters, people who needed it. And now she finds herself the target of threats online. She feels she has to change her movements. And as you said there, she feels her family is threatened. She's told the local police department to keep an eye on her and her family. She's that terrified.
And so what does she want to see happen now? Is she going to try to take Elon Musk to court over this?
She is suing DHS. I have the suit here. It's 11 pages, lawsuit. She is alleging that she was illegally fired. She is suing for damages, alleging defamation. She even says she wants her job back. I asked her how much money she wants. She said she wouldn't get into that, obviously, at this point. But she wants her name cleared, and she wants to be made whole again.
One of many lawsuits resulting from these mass firings. Maurice Dubois, thanks so much for bringing that story to us.
Thank you, Nance.
Coming up later this hour, Crypto Summit. He once called it a scam, but now President Trump is all in on the digital currency as the industry's leading executives gather at the White House. Plus, Democrats are fighting to change the narrative on social media, but have their latest TikToks flopped? We'll take a look at their social strategy next on America Decides. From podcasts to TikTok and Instagram, Republicans ruled the social media landscape this past election cycle. Now, Democrats are trying to fight back. More than 20 Senate Democrats posted this same video targeting the president.
That ain't true. That's what you just saw.
Prices are not down, they're up.
Inflation, it's getting worse.
The cost of groceries, gas, housing, yeah, even eggs is getting higher.
Let's bring in Peter Hamby. He's a partner at Puck News and the host of Snapchat's Good Luck America. Peter, it's great to see you.
Good to see you, Nancy.
So you just wrote an article for Puck about the efforts that Democrats are making to make some inroads in social media. Your article was called Revenge of the Nerds. They're fighting to change the narrative when it comes to Democrats on social media. So how are they faring?
I mean, I need to pick your brain on this, Nancy, but yeah, I mean, you're around a lot of these senators on Capitol Hill all the time. No one would ever think that Mazie Hirono and Sheldon Whitehouse and Mark Warner and Elizabeth Warren, no one would mistake them for social media savants. They're smart people, but their media strategies and the media strategies of a lot of Democrats, House, Gov, Senate, some presidential campaigns, is still, even now, very traditional. They think green room television first, New York Times first, small screen mobile phone second. And look, Democrats, especially in recent days, have done a lot of cringy things. And that was my first take when I saw this avalanche of TikTok videos. But then I saw Elon Musk and a bunch of MAGA people on Twitter, libs of TikTok, Mike Lee from Utah, retweeting all of these videos and compiling them and saying, ooh, there's some kind of conspiracy going on. Who wrote this scripted video? What it turns out is they were elevating an anti-Trump message about the economy, which was the substance of that scripted video. It was that prices are still up. Trump hasn't done anything to address prices so far. And, you know, in their own channels, these Senate Democrats were getting millions of views combined, Twitter, X, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. But then with Elon elevating them, you know, they were getting many millions more views. And we're talking about them right here, Nancy. And so I think what was interesting to me about this was just that they understand attention is all that matters, even if people are making fun of them. And that's how Trump thinks about the media, too.
Yeah, I don't think I would have known about that video if Republican influencers hadn't started posting it. You talk about cringy videos, so I want to play another video that could be described as cringy that was released this week and ask you about the point behind it. Let's take a look. Okay, call me a boomer, but I had no idea what the cultural reference was there, which makes me assume that probably I was not the target demographic. Who is?
Theoretically, from watching that, it would be young people on TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. This is an example of something I don't think is very good. I will say I've been talking to some Democrats in recent days about some of these strategies, tactics rather, and they're just happy that senators are at least trying. You see AOC right there. She's already good at social media. Lauren Underwood, pretty good at social media. I'm not sure Susie Lee and Judy Chu are, according to that video. That's a TikTok meme, a choose your fighter meme. It's like based on a video game. One problem with that meme on TikTok, that trend was popular like 2 or 3 years ago. So it's not even current. The difference is, I think, again, in that first sort of avalanche of videos, those were organized by Cory Booker. There was a strategy there from the Senate. There was a message embedded within it about prices in the economy. Maybe it's a boring message, but it's a message that it's something to talk about. Right. The second thing, there's no substance. It's substance free. And by the way, that's been a criticism of Kamala Harris and Democrats last year when they were talking about podcasts. Trump would go into podcast spaces and say something. He would make news. Maybe it was about policy. Maybe it wasn't. Democrats have to have something to say before they can go into these spaces and go viral. You can't just do a funny dance and expect it to work. So I don't think that was a great example of using social media, but they are trying.
That's such a good point. When you talk about podcasters, by the way, there was so much hand-wringing on the left about the fact that they didn't have someone who could compete with Republican-friendly podcasters like Joe Rogan or Theo Vaughn. Are they making any progress on that front?
That's always been my point too, Nancy. Bernie Sanders went on Joe Rogan. That's a good example. Andrew Yang went on Joe Rogan back in 2020 because they had ideas they wanted to talk about. So you need to go into those spaces armed with something. The best example of this we have this week is Gavin Newsom doing his own podcast and stepping in it, at least within his own party, on the issue of youth sports and whether trans girls should be able to play in youth sports. And Gavin Newsom broke with his own party on an issue that is popular with the American public, but unpopular within his party. So that's one thing the Democrats wanted. Some Democrats at least wanted some Democratic figures to do in the wake of the election. And then he did it on a forum, a podcast that also Democrats after the election were saying, we need to do more podcasts. And so here's Gavin Newsom doing the two things some Democrats in Washington were requesting after Kamala Harris's loss: breaking with the left, embracing new media, and facing nothing but blowback for it. So I think this is going to be a really interesting tension point for Democrats moving forward. It's a really interesting first example of whether or not Democrats can navigate those two spaces.
Yeah, growing pains for sure. I've heard some people say that maybe comedian Bill Burr could probably fill that gap, but that remains to be seen. Peter Hamby, thanks so much for talking today. It's great to see you.
Good to see you, Nancy. Thanks.
As Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau gets set to step aside, his party is about to pick a new leader. Later tonight, a look at who could soon be leading our neighbors to the north. You're watching America Decides. Stick around. President Trump signed an executive order today establishing a task force for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. But the executive order on everyone's radar, the one that aims to dismantle the Department of Education, has yet to receive the president's signature. It's still being worked on. Let's bring in our political panel to discuss. Maura Gillespie served as an advisor to former House Speaker John Boehner and former Congressman Adam Kinzinger, both Republicans, while Jaime Moore was the director for the Office of the Democratic National Committee Chair. Welcome to both of you. Great to see you. Let's start out, Maura, by talking about that executive order on the Department of Education, essentially aiming to dismantle it. I would imagine that there are Democratic and Republican lawmakers alike getting an earful from governors around the country, school boards around the country who are wondering what's going to happen to all the federal funding that passes through the Department of Education to schools in low-income areas, to schools to help them educate children with disabilities, student loans, and all the rest.
Certainly. And, the question remains, when this happens, what will happen to special education programs? And I think that is a large concern for many people. When the president talks about taking education and bringing it back to the states. Well, education largely is in the hands of the states. That's why I'm sitting here right now in New Jersey. New Jersey is, known for being one of the best states for education. And so that it already is a state-based issue. So I think there are still some concerns that need to be ironed out. And that's probably why he hasn't signed that executive order, because a plan needs to be put in place. What happens to those programs? It's like special education. What happens to some of those grants? And I think that that's not being, at least, communicated to us as to what that plan is. And if it hasn't been sorted out yet, it certainly needs to before he signs anything that would dismantle an entire department.
Yeah, there's this misperception out there that the Department of Education meddles in state and local decisions about education, but actually they're prevented from doing so by law. So, Jaime, why aren't Democrats out there shouting from the rooftops about this? I mean, education is one of the most popular things there is.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember, Nancy, the Democrats were at the Department of Education just a few weeks ago in their first protest. But that's not the thing that Democrats need to do. I think Democrats have to do what they're doing right now. They have to figure out a plan that's going to systematically address what Donald Trump's trying to do across government, not just education. But look, this is about competitiveness. I've talked to teachers and principals, even business owners across the country, and they're concerned that we're not going to be as competitive against China and other folk around the world. And so this is not just about taking a department down and restructuring government. This is about making sure that we're preparing our kids to compete on the global stage for generations.
Maura, I want to turn to tariffs because President Trump was back at it in the Oval Office today with some new policies that he says he's going to be implementing when it comes to tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
There could be some disturbance, a little bit of disturbance. I solved a little bit of that because I have respect for our auto companies, and I gave them a little bit of a 1-month reprieve because it was unfair.
Disturbance is the euphemism for stock market declining and prices potentially going up, at least in the short term. What do you make of the gyrations on tariffs this week?
So businesses have to plan. They have to figure out how to mitigate risks. And the unfortunate downside of this kind of back and forth on whether you're going to impose tariffs or not, businesses just need to have an answer so they can plan for it. And without having that definitive answer, they are likely going to have to raise prices in order to account for what those tariffs may end up being once they are put into action. So I think that Americans should really focus on that and prepare themselves for prices to go up on a whole host of things. But secondly, I worry as a Republican about the midterms, and language like that and language from the president's speech on Tuesday, saying it'll just be a little disturbance, a little painful. That's right for ads that Democrats will be using should things go south and people being in more pain and more hurt financially than they already have been before. And I think that's where Trump is likely to lose some of his most loyal supporters of when they can't afford their groceries, continue to make it worse.
Jaime, in the time we have left, I want to get your take on the former standard bearer of your party, Kamala Harris, now seriously considering a run for governor in the state of California.
Yeah, look, I think Vice President Harris has the right to make that decision on her own accord. I'm a huge fan of Vice President Harris, and I think she has a lot left to give to this country. And she loves public service. She's done it her entire career. But look, I think people are getting ahead of themselves. She said she's going to take some time to think about it. There are other Democrats in California that are also considering the race as well. And so I think it's too early to say, but she has that right. And if she does it, look, I'm going to say go do it.
It'll be fascinating to watch. Jaime Moore, Maura Gillespie, thank you both so much and have a great weekend.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of Canada's ruling Liberal Party will this weekend select a successor to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The frontrunner in the Liberal Party leadership race is named Mark Carney. He served as the head of the Bank of England before returning home to do the same in Canada. And he's seen as the best option to lead the country through a trade war with President Trump. Whoever is selected, the party's next leader, will then face their next test, which is a general election that has to be held no later than October 20th of this year. Mercedes Stevenson is here to discuss all of this with us. She is the Ottawa bureau chief for Global News. Mercedes, it's so good to see you. Can you explain, for those of us who live here in the U.S., the process by which a new prime minister will be selected starting on Sunday?
Thanks, Nancy. Great to be with you. And a great question that actually a lot of Canadians have right now, too. So this is going to be the election of the leader of the Liberal Party, which is only taking place by about 1% of Canadians. Anyone can join the Liberal Party for free to vote in this. It's not restricted, and it is the base that selects them. They can vote up until 3 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, and then all those votes will be counted. Because the Liberal Party is in power right now, the person who wins that, who we expect to likely be Mark Carney, becomes the next Prime Minister of Canada. And Canada has an interesting thing in our Constitution where our Prime Minister does not actually have to be elected. But that doesn't mean that won't be a political problem for Mark Carney, so we are anticipating an election sooner rather than later.
What should we know about Mark Carney? Why is he the front runner to become the next Liberal Party leader?
I think some of this is name brand recognition. Mark Carney was a very popular Bank of Canada governor. He presided while Stephen Harper was in power, who was a Conservative prime minister during the 2008 recession here. And what the bank did in terms of helping Canadians was seen as beneficial. So he's carrying that. He's also seen as a bit of a steady hand on the tiller and more of a business liberal, whereas the Liberals who've been in power here have swung more towards the left, more socialist type of policies than the Liberals necessarily had before. And this is a guy who's a Bay Street guy, so like our Wall Street. And then on top of that, he's seen as sort of this counter to Donald Trump, and that's had a significant impact in the polls here. The Conservatives were doing well, but as soon as Donald Trump took power and undertook some of the policies he has toward Canadians, we've seen a drop in Conservative support up here.
Yeah, I mean, that's been really striking. Does it look like the Liberal Party now actually has a shot of pulling this race off in October?
They do. They have a shot of pulling it off for sure. It's a competitive election, and frankly, none of us were really expecting that. We thought that the Conservatives were going to cakewalk through with a landslide majority. That was before Trump, and now everything has changed. We also expect, and we could talk about this more in a second, but that election is not going to wait until October because the Liberals might want to seize on the momentum they have now.
That's a good point. So how soon could they hold it?
It could be called theoretically as soon as Monday. Because the Liberals are in charge, in order to trigger a general election in Canada, they go see the Governor General, who is the King's representative in Canada, and ask for a dissolution of Parliament. Mark Carney probably wants to do that, maybe not immediately, but before March 24th, which is when our Parliament returns. And that's for two reasons. Number one, it prevents him from being criticized as an unelected Prime Minister without a mandate. Number two, he rides that new popularity that he has, and then on top of that, he doesn't allow the opposition to make the decision to take him down. And both opposition parties have said they will do that on March 24th. The Liberals have power, but it's a minority parliament. So we are expecting likely an early spring election here.
Wow, that's fascinating. So things could move really, really quickly. Mercedes Stevenson, thank you so much for the Canadian civics lesson. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Well, here in the States, Cuomo's comeback. The disgraced New York governor looks to make a return to politics. He plans to trade the state capitol for New York City Hall. We'll tell you more about that when we come back. You're watching America Decides.
We are here because we love New York and we know New York City is in trouble. You can feel it.
3.5 years after leaving New York's governor's mansion in disgrace, Andrew Cuomo is on the campaign trail hoping for a second act. He's running to be New York City's next mayor. Cuomo, who became a voice of reason during the early days of the pandemic, would later face criticism over nursing home deaths in New York. And then he was forced to resign in the summer of 2021 over sexual harassment allegations. Chief political correspondent for CBS News New York, Marcia Kramer, is here now. What a political story, Marcia. It's so great to see you. And then this recent Quinnipiac poll comes out that shows Cuomo has a commanding lead already in New York City. Explain to non-New Yorkers why that would be, despite all these scandals that engulfed his final year as governor.
Well, you have to understand that he has incredible name recognition, and the other people who are running against him are really not that well known. So he jumped to the top of the polls based on name recognition and also his reputation for being a tough guy who could stand up to President Trump and has the knowledge of both city and state affairs. Now, I can tell you that in the week or so since Cuomo actually announced, some of the Democrats who are running against him have trying to do their best to bring up the past scandals, both the nursing home situation and the reason why he left office. But I don't know what the polls are going to show once they take their best shots at him. But, you know, in New York right now, there's a sense that there's a leadership vacuum, that the present mayor hasn't stood up to President Trump when there's a need to do that. And that's part of Cuomo's appeal. Also, he polls well in the same areas, in the same groups that Mayor Adams polls good in. And there's some question whether Mayor Adams is going to run for re-election.
Yeah, and when it comes to baggage, if there's one person who rivals Cuomo, it is Mayor Eric Adams. But he says he shouldn't be counted out. Take a listen to what he said yesterday.
You're going to see why I am the mayor, because I know how to campaign. I know how to get information out to people. I know how to overcome hurdles. I know it so well. The worst thing I can do is surrender to a lie, and I would never do that.
So, Marcia, what does his path to re-election look like? Does he have to hope that another strong candidate gets into the race and siphons support away from Cuomo?
Well, see, you know, it's a very complicated race because, look, that was tough talk for Mayor Adams, and he has been talking tough, but I'm going to point out some things to you. Number one, he hasn't started raising money yet. Number two, his normal campaign spokespeople who have run the last campaign in 2021 have not been hired yet. So there's a significant question about whether he actually plans to run. Now, he actually got a really good boost today because a special prosecutor that was brought in by the judge in his criminal case actually ruled that he thought that the case from Washington should be dismissed totally, not with prejudice as the Justice Department ruled, but which was without prejudice. This is with prejudice, which means the case is over. It can't be brought again, which could free him to stand up to President Trump. I think it remains to be seen whether the mayor runs again, but you know, he's going to if he wants to run, he has to collect petitions by the beginning of April and get 4,000 signatures. He has to start raising money, and he has to hire campaign staff. Now, he has an advantage. He has the bully pulpit of being the mayor, and he can have press conferences every day of the week and do things to remind people the things that he's done and he's accomplished since he became mayor.
Is there anyone else you're watching to see if they get into this race, or has Cuomo kind of scared off other would-be contenders?
Well, see, here's what's happened. So a number of people who are not thrilled about having Andrew Cuomo run again, including the Attorney General who did the report that talked about the sexual harassment charges, have urged the current Council Speaker, Adrienne Adams, to get into the race. She got into the race, is having a press conference actually tomorrow to announce her formal campaign. And people are wondering whether she could be the person that could then, you know, jump in the polls and take over the other two spots. It's unclear because she's not that well known, and it's going to take a massive amount of money to get her well known throughout the city.
Wow, well, that's going to be a fascinating race to watch. I imagine New Yorkers are looking for competence first and foremost. Marcia Kramer, thank you so much for breaking it down.
Thank you.
Well, he's one of the most powerful people in the U.S. government. But before Peter Marocco was charged with dismantling USAID, he secretly met with Christian nationalists abroad. Next, more on that off-limits meeting and what it says about his latest role. You're watching America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. New reporting is shedding light on the man at the State Department in charge of dismantling USAID. ProPublica revealed that Peter Marocco secretly met with Bosnian Serb separatist leaders in the Balkans during the first Trump administration. One of those Christian nationalists in attendance was under U.S. sanctions at the time. This was just one of several actions Marocco took that violated agency policy. One of the journalists behind that investigation, Brett Murphy, joins us now. Brett, it is great to see you. It was a fascinating article because I think a lot of people, when Marocco first started dismantling USAID with rapid speed, wondered, who is this guy and what's his backstory? And you really fleshed it out, and it is a very unusual backstory.
Yeah, that's right. He was well known to people inside of the State Department, inside of USAID. He had worked at both agencies in the previous administration, as well as the Pentagon. And this episode in the Balkans was really illustrative for a lot of them because they said it was something he did often. leaving the reservation to meet on his own with emissaries and other officials abroad without speaking with the ambassador first. This meeting he had with the Serb separatists was incredibly important because one of the people he met with was Milorad Dodik. Milorad Dodik is the president of Republika Srpska, and as you said, he was at the time under U.S. sanctions. He was under U.S. sanctions by the Trump administrations for undermining the Dayton Agreement, which is our critical peace agreement that the U.S. drew up after the genocide in Bosnia-Herzegovina. So this was really, really important, and having that meeting was a big no-no, and it got him in some hot water at the time.
Yeah, and you outlined several examples in different countries where U.S. policy said one thing and he went in the other direction, really angering and frustrating both colleagues and officials at USAID.
The thing that came up a lot in the reporting, and it's come up recently as well, is his nods to Christian nationalism and his questions over what exactly USAID is doing, why USAID exists, why foreign aid exists. In a meeting just this week, just this past week, he met with the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and these questions came up again. He was questioning the constitutionality of foreign aid. He brought up the color revolutions, and he thought that there may be some criminal activity. He was kind of vague about it at the agency that he's been dismantling, and these were very alarming comments to some of the lawmakers who were in the meeting, because he was, of course, echoing sentiments that have come out of the Kremlin about protests, in the Balkans and in other parts of the world. So this has all been really concerning to a lot of people. And that president he met with back in 2018, Milorad Dodik, has said since then that he is pro-Russia, anti-West, and anti-U.S. So this is all alarming to a lot of people who have been watching him closely for years now.
Yeah, I mean, in the article, you described his efforts to rapidly disassemble USAID as almost a personal vendetta against the agency and the people who had criticized him over the years. Why did you draw that conclusion?
Yeah, so last time around, when he was at USAID, he was frequently trying to conduct reviews of the programming. He was getting out in front of the people who were above him. He was crossing lines with people who worked alongside him. And what he kept saying he wanted to do was review these programs, questioning why they existed at all. Anything that had a budget item, line item over $10,000, he wanted to personally review. And a lot of the people he worked with at the time said this effectively was, seemed like an effort to halt a lot of these operations on a smaller scale to what we're seeing right now. He ran afoul of a lot of the people he worked with, so much so that, towards the end of his tenure at USAID last time around, he was kind of on the bench right up until the end of the administration. So what those folks are saying now, what they're seeing now, is sort of a at-scale version of what he was trying to do last time, and that is to effectively end all of U.S. foreign aid. And they have not made qualms about that's what they're doing right now.
Right, and he's been pretty effective at it because USAID has been shrunk down to almost nothing, although there are a lot of lawsuits still pending. Brett Murphy, it was a fascinating article. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about it.
Thanks, Nancy.
The Trump administration looks to cash in on crypto, the digital currency, and why the president is focusing on bolstering Bitcoin in particular. You're watching America Decides. We'll have that next. Welcome back to America Decides. Leaders from the cryptocurrency industry gathered at the White House today for its first ever Digital Assets Summit, where President Trump delivered remarks.
Last year, I promised to make America the Bitcoin superpower of the world and the crypto capital of the planet, and we're taking historic action to deliver on that promise.
Victoria Guida joins us now. She is an economics correspondent for Politico. Victoria, so good to see you. Back in 2019, Trump bashed crypto as something, quote, whose value is highly volatile and based on thin air. What changed?
Well, there is a huge group of voters here that was involved in voting for the president. There was also a lot of crypto money that went into funding the president's campaign, along with a lot of lawmakers that were just elected. And so the crypto industry has sort of convinced Washington that they're a force to be reckoned with, that they should be listened to.
You had all these crypto leaders united in person at the White House today, but you recently wrote an article that dove into how fractured this industry actually is. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so when you hear the word crypto, one of the things that's very confusing about it is that people still don't entirely agree on what it's for, what it's useful for. And so if you think about Bitcoin, right, it was originally conceived of as a currency, as something that you were supposed to use to pay for things. But the way that we really talk about crypto these days is about as an investment, where it's useful to be able to invest in because the price is going to go up. And actually, that doesn't make it a very good currency. And so there is a lot of conflict about what crypto should be, what it should look like, and how decentralized it should be, because you have a coin like Bitcoin where nobody really controls it, and then you have other crypto coins that are controlled by firms, and that just leads to a lot of different interests that are pushing in a lot of different directions.
In your article, you called the crypto industry, quote, a complicated blend of grift and innovation. Explain why you characterized it that way and what needs to change in order to be less grift, more innovation.
Well, that's sort of the question. So the reason why it's innovative is because there is a lot of reasons why crypto is sort of a more technologically efficient way to do finance. And so you actually hear people in the traditional finance world talk about what they call tokenizing something, a normal traditional asset like a stock or a bond, because you can create sort of faster, more efficient ways of moving assets. But one of the things that's sort of unsettled about crypto is there isn't very much rules around it. And so it opens the door for people to create a crypto for whatever purpose, just have people plow money into it, and then those people might get screwed. And so what the hope that I have, and the hope that a lot of people have for what Washington will do, is that they'll put rules around this so that you're sort of encouraging a situation where the useful purposes of crypto, whatever those may be, are encouraged, and the situations where people might have the rug pulled out from under them and lose money, those are less encouraged.
So then what do you make of the president's new executive order yesterday that establishes a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and particularly his choice of Bitcoin over all the other cryptocurrencies out there? What's the significance of that?
So he created two different things. There was the strategic Bitcoin reserve, as you mentioned, and then there was also the digital asset stockpile. And both of these are supposed to be based on crypto assets that the government has seized, that law enforcement has seized in criminal cases. The difference is that they left open the door for the government to buy more Bitcoin. They said that this would have to be in a taxpayer-neutral way, so it can't cost the government net money. It's really unclear how exactly that would work. But they basically say that Bitcoin is fundamentally different because it is particularly decentralized, right? There's nobody who could potentially pull the strings because so many people have to be involved and to agree on the rules governing the Bitcoin framework. But in terms of what it's useful for, that's a little bit less clear. They're calling it a digital Fort Knox to sort of point to the fact that the U.S. has a huge stockpile of gold that we amassed back when there used to be a gold standard. But we don't really use that gold for anything. It is just sort of sitting there. And so it's sort of an open question what that would be for.
Right. It's a brave new world. Victoria Guida, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that does it for today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report starts right now.